Are you lost in the chaotic whirlwind of day-to-day busyness? Do you yearn for a deeper sense of meaning and purpose in your life? Welcome to Be You, Your Story, Your Purpose, the podcast dedicated to empowering women on their journey of self-discovery and finding their true purpose through their own story. I'm your host, Brenda Simmons. Welcome, my friends, to the podcast. I am so excited to talk about my topic today, and I want to begin by sharing a little story with you. The other day, I was working on my ideal client for my coaching business. I felt like I needed to define this a little bit more and to be able to be a little bit more intimate with her. I'd had a mentor talk to me about that and coach me on how I should make that a little bit more robust. Well, I was working on this and I was getting really frustrated and very angry because it just wasn't coming to me. And at one point I even was like, I can't find her and she's not telling me who she is and yeah, on and on and on, right? Well, this thought came to me. So silly. She's not going to tell you who she is if you're mad at her. And I had to just stop and I went, oh, yeah, that's true. I mean, and if you think about that, if you're trying to become friends with somebody, they're not going to become friends with you if you're always mad at them, right? So it's the same kind of situation. I was trying to find this person, this ideal person that I wanted to attract as my client. And she wasn't going to show herself to me because I was always mad at her. And so I then had this thought, you know what? I just need to love her to life. And it was just this phrase that came to me, but it was one that really hit me. And I thought, oh, that is really profound. What else can this be applied to? And so I started to think my creative juices were starting to flow. And I was like, okay, so what does it mean to love something to life, to love it? It can be anything. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So, but what does it mean to love something to life? Well, as I started thinking about this, I thought, okay, well, it really means that you're going to bring something into existence because of the love that you're showing it, right? So that's in the words itself, love something to life. You're showing it love, and so it is coming to life. Well, this implies a little bit more than that. I think it implies nurturing and cultivation, and it's not something that's just going to come overnight. And it's not something that's going to fully reveal itself in one moment. So there is a process that must take place in order to cultivate that idea or whatever it is that you are trying to do. And it's that, I mean, think about, working in a garden, right? You're cultivating that and you're weeding it and you're constantly out there working on something until it reaches its full potential. And that's the same kind of idea with loving something to life. You are caring for it, you're cultivating it, you're spending time with it, you are nurturing it so that it can reach its full potential. So essentially, it encapsulates the idea of this infusion of love and positivity in whatever you're doing in order to manifest what your desired outcome is, or the desired experience, or whatever it is. And so the more I was thinking about this, the more I thought, okay, this is a concept that is applicable to so many different situations. And really, it's any situation that you can think of. I mean, think about this. It's applicable in finding the right employment. Like if you are always ticked off that you can't find the right job, do you think you're really going to find the right job? Because people are going to feel that energy when you are applying or you're trying to start your own business or whatever, that energy gets transferred. And so if it's always a negative energy, perhaps you should rethink that. You can love a relationship to life. Like this is probably the most common thing that people think of. You love something to life. And I have found this to be true. And in fact, I'm going to come back to relationships in a little bit because I think it's very profound what we can do in loving a relationship to life. Okay, let's take something like redecorating your house, right? That just seems totally inconsequential, right? But again, if you hate on your house all the time, do you think you're really going to be inspired to show it in the light that it really wants to be shown in? So same kind of thing. How about a vacation? If you want to go on a vacation and you're always, oh, it's never going to happen, or, I'm so angry I can't get the right tickets, or I can't do, and you're constantly angry about it, do you really think you're going to have the vacation that you want? How about writing a book? I have actually, you know how at the end of a book it'll have the acknowledgments and sometimes it'll talk about the author will talk about, oh, how fun it was to see where these characters, how they were developed and they had no idea that certain characters would turn out a certain way, and it's just kind of a glimpse into this creation process and how they really had to work at bringing that creation to life. Super interesting. Okay, let's say maybe you're like me and you're an entrepreneur and you want to create a client experience, or maybe you are teaching a class, or maybe you are throwing an event or something like that. And again, look at it as, okay, if you are constantly upset about how the process is going with creating this class or event or experience, do you think you're really going to have the experience that you really want if you have all of this negative energy around it? I submit to you that no, you're not. And you really are only going to have those things that you desire if you love it first. That has to come first. So let's talk a little bit about this. How do you love something to life? Well, I think that you first have to have an understanding that you are creating something all the time. We are beings of creation. That is what we do. It is innate in us. And I don't think it's something that we can really separate ourselves from. Really, the question is, what are we creating? And I'm going to come back to that too. Okay, so let's look at this process because creation has a specific pattern and it is like this all the time, no matter what it is that you're creating. So I'm going to use building a home. My husband does construction. He used to build custom homes. And I think the visualization of seeing a home being built is something that's really easy to understand. So I'm going to use that as my example. But just know that you can replace building a home with whatever it is that you want. Just fill in the blank. Okay. So we're going to follow this pattern with creating a home. So the very first step in creation is a spiritual step. Your things first have to be created spiritually. And what I mean by this is you first have to have the idea. You have to have a dream. And there's this dream phase that happens where you're like, okay, well, what kind of a home would I want? What would it look like? What are my goals with it? What do I want to accomplish in this, in the home? What features do I want it to have? And this really is a dream phase where you're kind of narrowing down the options of what you want to do. Inherent in this is a belief that you can do it, that this thing can be accomplished. Because if you're dreaming in it, trying to figure out what you want to do, and again with the building a home, if you knock that dream off its pedestals, oh, I can't do it anyway, that's it. You're not going to proceed to any other step. So inherent in this creation, in this spiritual creation, is that belief that it can be done and that you can do it and that you have a role in that creation. So number two is so you've got the spiritual creation and then you've got this mental creation. And I think that they are different. I think a lot of people will lump those together, but I actually think that these are two different steps because spiritual creation is more of that idea and dream phase and narrowing things down. And the mental phase is where you're starting to work out those details. You're starting to go, okay, well, I want a one-story house and I want this and I want that. And you're bringing all of those decisions into one cohesive mental visualization, one unit inside your brain. Well, pretty soon you're going to have so many details inside your brain, you're not going to be able to hold them all together. You're going to have to put it down on paper. And this is where, like, if you're building a home, you're going to start to work on the blueprint. You're going to start writing out, what it's going to look like in a two-dimensional fashion, like a floor plan. And you're going to start looking at, all right, how big do you want specifically the rooms to be? How do you want the kitchen to look? How big is the yard? Where's the house going to be placed on the lot? How are you going to build the roof? What kind of a roof are you going to have? How many windows are you going to have? What are the dimensions of those windows? So you see all of these details start coming through, and our brains can't hold all of them. So that's why we're shifting from the mental stage of creation to a two-dimensional stage of creation. And so things are getting down on that paper. It's two-dimensional. You're starting to seek advice. Maybe you're going to an engineer. You're saying, okay, can this be done? Can we have the open space this big? Can we have an arch here? Can we, what is it that we can do down to the details? Well, once you get done with that two-dimensional phase, you're going to move into a three-dimensional phase. So this is where things start to be physically constructed. So maybe you are doing a prototype first. Maybe you're tweaking the designs. Maybe you're bringing in all of the materials to actually put this plan into motion physically. Sometimes there are improvements that need to be made, and so you might have to deconstruct something in order to construct it again. And so this is a very, very important phase where the two-dimensional now becomes three-dimensional. So you may be asking, okay, isn't three-dimensional life itself like it's what you're trying to create? And I don't think quite yet, right? Because when you're building a home, there's a lot that goes into it, and you're constructing it in this three-dimensional way. But really, it's not complete until all of the construction tools are gone. The power is turned on, the water is turned on, and things are starting to flow. Until you've got that movement inside and all of the systems are functioning and it's got a life of its own and it can be run on its own. So that, I think, is the difference between that three-dimensional phase and that life. So you can see all of these different stages that we've gone through in the home building process. This is the same process with anything. Fill in the blank there with whatever it is that you want to create. It doesn't have to be necessarily even something three-dimensional. It can be something of, I'm creating you're just developing an idea, like a class, right? The class, something that you're teaching isn't necessarily something that you build, but it's something that you share, and it's got to be fully developed before you are able to teach it. Okay. So we have to just remember that we are always, always, always creating something, right? What we are creating may not be what we want to create. And this is a very, very important concept to wrap your brains around, because if you are not creating what you want and you're just kind of letting life happen, you are still creating. You are still developing friendships. You're still developing, whatever it is. But you may not be aware of it. And I think that we need to be a little bit more aware of the things that we are creating. So remember that we're already always creating. And then when you love something to life, I believe the more I've looked into this, that it actually requires an attitude shift. So remember how in the beginning I was really dissing on my ideal client that I really wanted to get to know. Well, having that attitude shift for me changed everything. Once I shifted out of my negativity and I put away my feelings of resentment and frustration, and it was so amazing how it just started to flow. And it honestly, I thought, wow, just going from focusing on the negative and my frustration to really sensing a feeling of love and acceptance and of joy and gratitude, it just made all the difference in the world to me. So replacing your negative energies, your never negative thoughts, your negative emotions, and replacing those with positive energies of gratitude and excitement and a can-do attitude, these are absolutely vital. Now, this does not mean that you have a delusional belief that nothing will go wrong or it won't be hard or, that it's all going to be peaches and cream, right? That is not reality. Rather, it is a belief that the things that do go wrong will lead you to what it should be. I think that's a really vital recognition that sometimes things fail or they don't go the way we want because that's not the right way we need to go. And it's not going to lead us to whatever that we're creating, what that needs to be. And that leads us to the next one. I think there's a shift in perspective that we need to adopt when we want to love something to life. Because so many times, and I'm totally speaking from experience here because I do this all the time and it's something that I'm really trying to work on. What I want may be different from what the creation needs to be. And so when we make it constantly about ourselves, then it doesn't really work out. And it's a nuance that really makes a really big difference. And I think this is something that we do with our kids all the time, or maybe I'm speaking for myself, but I think even in the little things, in the little interactions that we have with children, we adults tend to do this a lot. We insert what they want them to do and how we want them to be, rather than letting them be who they need to be. So, for example, um, let's say you're coloring with a toddler and you say, let's color inside the lines. And they say, no, I don't want to color in the lines. And you say, oh, but it's pretty. I mean, it's totally innocuous comment, but that's not where their learning is, right? And so sometimes and that's a very simple example, but I found that I was doing this to my teenage son and I was trying to get him to behave in a certain way. And I realized that it was damaging our relationship and it also wasn't what he needed. He didn't need me to tell him how to act and how to be. And he didn't need me to tell him what I wanted because what I wanted wasn't him. And that was a lesson that I had to learn. That was on me. I had to get out of the way and let him be who he needed to be, even though it wasn't necessarily what my idea of him was. And so that was a kind of a hard shift for me, but it was one that was vital and necessary. And honestly, like our relationship is so good, so much better because I got out of his way. So when we get out of the way of what that creation needs to be, it's able to flourish into what it should be. I hope that concept is transferable, not just in relationships and other people, but in what you are creating. So remember, think of those authors, who were creating these characters and they had to get out of the way and just let them come forward. So it's kind of that same idea. Okay, once we've got this shift in perspective and we've got this shift in attitude and we realize that we're always creating, we need to expect the miracle. And I really loved Christina Owens, and this is a couple weeks ago. Her her expectation of miracles was so fascinating to me. And I don't know if you guys caught that. If you haven't listened to it, go back and listen because I thought that was so interesting. Because we have to remember that we're not in control of everything. The how is not all our responsibility, figuring out that how. The miracle is that how coming into play, and it can also be the who's that come into play. And when you are creating something, letting those hows and those who's come forward to help that creation to be what it needs to be. So let's go back to relationships again. Maybe there's a who out there that is going to help your relationship, or maybe there's a how. Like I knew a man who he it was really, really important for him to spend time with his teenage son. And so he decided that he was going to go, they loved mountain biking. And so he was going to go take his son on a weekly mountain biking ride. But his rule was they were there to have fun, absolutely no lectures. No telling him how to do things or or disciplining or anything. It was a safe space where they were just going to have fun. And so that was a how that came into being that really helped that relationship. And so keep those things in mind. No, and here's the thing. I've talked about how this process works for things that we are creating. But my question to you is if this works on a micro level in our lives, things that we're trying to bring into creation, will it work on a macro level for our life in general? I recently finished listening to the book called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. Fascinating book. And I know I've mentioned before that my goal or my word of the year is surrender. And so I've been really trying to lean into that and to learn more about it. And this book was absolutely perfect for that. And Michael Singer, he actually goes by Mickey. His surrender experiment is not like on something. His experiment is his life itself. And he was he he loved meditation. Like he was a hippie at heart way back in the 60s. And that's all he wanted. He wanted to meditate. He wanted to hang out in his backwoods Florida home. And he had no interest in really doing anything else. However, he also recognized that life offered him opportunities, and life, I say life, but he calls it flow. This flow offered him opportunities that he realized that he needed to take. And so he was committed that when life offered him these opportunities, he would follow them. And so these opportunities included teaching at a university level, creating a construction company, diving into computer programming and creating Medical Manager, which is, back in the day when technology was new and programming was new, it was one of the top programs for managing medical records. Like it was kind of the one that people turned to in those early days. And so here he was doing all of these different things. I mean, and you'll notice they don't seem related at all. I mean, he would provide retreats for yogis and where people would meditate and do yoga. And, so you've got, the hippie lifestyle and you've got this university professor, you've got, construction, and he didn't even know how to construct anything. He just had this opportunity. And so he went with it. And it was just so fascinating to me where life took him. Along the way, I found that he was very generous in the things that he gave. Like he didn't want to live in a big house. He didn't want to own a lot of possessions. He wanted to keep his life very, very simple. So much of the income that he earned, he would give back to his businesses or to other organizations. And that was really interesting too. And here's the thing, when the opportunity came, he would just figure things out. And not only that, as I looked at kind of the expanse of his surrender experiment, like his life, I realized wasn't it interesting how the things that came to him, those opportunities tended to be things that he was very good at. Once he learned how to do it, he was very good at the construction, at managing business, at computer programming, at, all of these different things. And isn't that interesting how life will give us opportunities that not only will help us to grow and progress, but will be things that we will enjoy too. I thought that was really, really beautiful. And as he filled his life with more appreciation and more gratitude and more love for this ability to surrender to these opportunities that came in, the more opportunities came. And so that I just thought that was such a great example of loving something to life, loving your life to life. And I also think it's interesting and important to point out that there can be many things in life that can go terribly wrong, things that we cannot control, things that hurt, things that affect us mentally and physically and emotionally and spiritually. And we may not have the control to prevent these things from happening. However, we can control our ability to love it or not. And I'm not saying loving trauma or whatever, but I do think that there are things that you can find to love. And I loved my guest this last week, who Heather Wagner, she is one of these people who just has so much love for life and so much joy and enthusiasm that it really, you can see how even in her own business, she is able to love that business to life because she's able to love the people that she works with and the people that she helps. It's just really super, super beautiful. So remember, when you're looking at your life in general, these four things come into play still, like the four rules I was talking about earlier. We're always creating. So are you intentionally creating the life that you want? And remember, we may not be able to control everything, but the things that we can control, are we controlling them? Are we controlling our attitude? Are we controlling our gratitude? Are we controlling the things that can, our thoughts and our emotions? Are we controlling all of those things? Because we have 100% control over those. Okay, are we, where's our attitude? You got to check that. Are you focusing on the positive and showing gratitude? And remember, that which we focus on grows all the time. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad or whatever, it just is. Whatever you focus on is going to grow. Number three, that perspective shift. Remember, get out of the way of what your life is trying to teach you. What is it? What is it that your life is trying to teach you? Like, because so many times I'll interview people and they'll go, like, this kept happening to me, or and I'll talk to other people and they go, well, I don't know why this keeps happening. And like, watch for those patterns of things that keep repeating because your life is probably telling you something. And so sometimes we have to get out of the, kind of get out of the forest so that we can see the trees and see what it is that we need to learn, because those experiences will keep happening to us until we learn that lesson and can move on. And then lastly, expecting those miracles. Do we expect the miracles to come in our life, the who's and the how's that will provide pathways to take you where you need to go? Sometimes I think it helps. I guess not sometimes. I think it always helps to have positive affirmations. And I've gotten to a practice where on my way to work, I don't listen, like, I love listening to podcasts. I love listening to books, obviously. I love listening to music, and I almost always have something going on. But I have found that in the mornings when I'm heading into work, into my office, that it really benefits me to have some quiet time where I can sit with my thoughts and sit with where I'm at that moment. And I like to verbalize my affirmations. It's just the perfect time for me to do that when I'm in the car. And I've talked about verbalizing rather than just writing or thinking them because I really believe that it cements it inside of our souls when we can do this. So I've come up with some good affirmations. Obviously, if you want to add your own or change what I have, by all means, do what you need to do. But some good affirmations if you're trying to love something to life. And in this one, um, you can apply it to life in general or something that you are creating. So here are some affirmations that you can use. I create, therefore I am. I love my life and all that I'm creating. I am capable of creating something significant. I am a vessel of creation. Because you are. We all are. We all create. What are you creating? I hope that this has been helpful I hope that this has been helpful for you. And if you know somebody who would like to hear this or could benefit from this, please share this. I have a mission to share this goodness and share these pathways of acceptance and self-acceptance and joy and love and fun and I can do that with you because that is what I'm creating. And until next time, I hope you know that your purpose is in your story. Take care.
Celebrate your dreams, let them take flight, for you are a star, shining bright in every step you take. Let your